Welcome to Nocturnal Echoes. I'm your host, Bastian Crow. The stories you're about to hear come from a personal archive, a growing collection passed down through family, shared among friends, and discovered in old journals and time-worn letters. The kind of pages you don't find twice. With each episode, we'll share some of these ghostly encounters, brief flickers of the unknown, meant to quiet the noise and stress of the day, to guide your mind toward darker places, where stories linger. And once a month, we reach further back, the monthly special features, an entry pulled from one of our centuries-old diaries or letters, accounts that often feel more like warnings than memories. You never know if we'll follow the trail of a witch hunt from the 1600s, experience a nightmare recorded in the 1800s, or simply hear how those who came before us coped with the unexplained. Be sure to follow or like and subscribe so you don't miss when the past speaks again. Now, dim the lights. Find your favorite spot. Get ready. Nocturnal Echoes begins.
It wasn't something I ever imagined would happen to me. I had a job, a small apartment, and a routine I thought would carry me along just fine. But then came the layoffs, the bills piling higher than my paychecks, the slow unraveling of plans I'd once felt certain about. Before I knew it, I was out of savings, out of options, and out of a place to live. I stayed with a friend for a little while, slept on couches where I could, but those offers ran out quickly. Pride swallowed. I ended up with a bedroll, a few bags, and the city itself as my roof. Most nights I tried to find places that felt tucked away, corners under overpasses, abandoned lots, or quiet alleys where I wouldn't be noticed. I didn't want trouble. I just wanted to get through each night in peace. It was during that stretch of my life that I began to hear the hooves. The first night it happened, I was lying on a patch of flattened grass just past the edge of a small park. The city lights were distant enough that the place stayed dark, which made it easier for me to sleep without people staring. I remember it was late, past midnight. The world felt emptied out, with only the occasional sound of a car passing on some faraway road. That's when I heard it. Steady, repeated clops, hoofbeats. At first I thought I must have been half dreaming, caught in that hazy space where your mind stitches together the random noises of the night. But it grew louder, more distinct, the slow, deliberate rhythm of a horse walking on pavement. I sat up, looking toward the path that cut through the park, my eyes strained against the dark, searching for any sign of movement. I never saw a horse, never saw a rider, but I swear I saw something else, a shadow. It stretched across the grass, long and thin, thrown from a source that wasn't there. The outline of a horse's body, legs moving in time with the sound of hooves. A rider sat on its back, tall and still, the figure blurred as if smoke had taken a shape. And then it was gone. The sound faded and the shadow dissolved. I was left sitting there, staring at nothing. I told myself it was fatigue, the product of hunger and stress. My body was run down, my mind desperate for rest. That had to be it. But it wasn't the last time. The hoofbeats came again the following week. This time I was camped beneath an overpass. The concrete pillars around me turned every noise into an echo. So at first I thought it was just the sound of a car rattling somewhere above. But then came the rhythm, the unmistakable cadence of hooves striking ground. I gripped my blanket and held still. Clop, clop, clomp. The sound drew closer, steady and patient. I dared to look toward the open road beyond the underpass, and that's when I saw it again. The shadow. It slid across the ground, stretching far longer than any passing figure should. A horse, a rider. Their shapes moved along the wall, distorted by the concrete, but too clear to mistake. And just as before, there was no horse in the flesh, no man guiding it. only the echo of presence etched in darkness. I shut my eyes tight and waited until the sound faded. After that, I couldn't shake the sense that it was following me. Every few nights when the city went quiet and sleep was beginning to take me, I'd hear it, the hollow clapping of hooves. Sometimes it came from the street behind me, sometimes from the path ahead, always measured, always unhurried. I asked myself, why me? Why would some ghostly horseman be trailing after a man who had nothing? I wasn't living in some grand house with secrets in the walls. I wasn't wandering battlefields or graveyards. I was just a man who'd slipped through the cracks trying to make it through the night unnoticed. But maybe that's exactly why. One night in late autumn, I found myself sleeping on the edge of town. I'd walked farther than usual that day, out past the warehouses, where the streets thinned into stretches of road that no one seemed to use. I laid down beneath a half-dead tree, wrapping my coat around me to fight the chill. I don't know what woke me, but when my eyes opened, the night was silent. Then came the sound. Clop, clop, clop. It was closer than ever before. I sat upright, every nerve in my body tight. Across the empty road, I saw it, clearer this time than any time before. The shadow of a horse and rider. The horse's head bowed slightly, its mane flickering as though caught by an unseen wind. The rider sat straight-backed, his outline sharp against the darkness, a hat perched low over his face. The shadow wasn't rushing. It wasn't chasing. It was simply passing. But as it did, I swear its head turned toward me. Just a slight angle. Enough for me to feel the weight of a gaze, though no features could be seen. The hoofbeats slowed. For the first time, I thought I heard something else. Not a word exactly, but a sound that reminded me of one. Low, dragging, like the beginnings of a voice carried on the wind. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. And then, as quickly as it came, it was gone. The shadow stretched long and vanished. The hoofbeats receded into silence. After that night, I couldn't deny it anymore. This wasn't just a trick of exhaustion or the mind playing cruel games. Something was there, something that walked the streets long after it should have been gone. I began to wonder about him, the rider, who he had been, what bound him to those lonely paths. I thought about old stories I'd heard as a child, of travelers who died on the road and never found rest, of horsemen who rode eternally searching for something lost. And I wondered if he saw me not as a man down on his luck, but as someone like him. A drifter without a home, bound to the margins of the world. That thought should have frightened me, but it didn't. Not entirely. Because the truth is, for those months I was homeless, I felt invisible. People passed me without a glance. Doors closed before I could even ask for work. I was nothing more than a shadow myself. But to him, whoever or whatever he was, I wasn't invisible. He saw me. Eventually, I got back on my feet. A temporary job turned into a longer one. I saved enough for a small apartment. The nights under bridges and trees faded into memory, though never entirely. But even now, when I'm alone, when the streets are empty and the air is still, I sometimes find myself listening, because I know what I heard. And sometimes, just sometimes, I think I still catch it in the distance. Clop, clop, clop. The echo of hooves, the shadow of a rider who moves through the dark, unbound by time or place. And though I never saw his face, I can't shake the feeling that he'll pass my way again someday. That when the world grows quiet and I find myself alone once more, he'll be there, horse and rider, walking steadily through the night, keeping step with the forgotten. When I first rented that place, I didn't think much of it. It was small, cheap, and close to work. The kind of apartment you sign a lease for because the price is right, not because it feels like home. The building was old, brick facade, 3 stories tall, tucked at the end of a quiet street. the sort of place you pass by without ever really noticing. Inside, the stairwell always smelled faintly of dust and old varnish, and the walls had layers of paint so thick that every corner looked rounded. But for me, it worked. The landlord, an older man named Warren, gave me the tour. He was friendly enough, but he talked more than I wanted. He explained how the wiring had been redone, how the pipes were new, and how the apartment was quiet but not lonely. I remember thinking that was a strange way to phrase it, but I let it go. The apartment itself was simple. A narrow kitchen, a small living room, and a single bedroom with creaky wood floors. The boards were warped in places, rising slightly like waves frozen in mid-motion. I figured that came with age. I moved in the following week. For the first few nights, everything was normal. I set up my bed, stacked some boxes in the corner, and tried to ignore how cold the apartment stayed no matter how high I turned up the heater. It was drafty, I thought. Old buildings always are. But then one night as I was falling asleep, I heard something. It wasn't loud. In fact, at first I thought it was the hum of the heater or maybe water rushing through pipes. But after a while I realized it wasn't mechanical. It was softer, rhythmic, whispering. I froze in bed, staring at the ceiling. The sound came from below me, beneath the floorboards. I couldn't make out words. Just a low, breathy murmur that rose and fell like a conversation I wasn't meant to hear. I told myself it had to be a neighbor. The building had 3 floors. Maybe the sound carried up through vents or cracks. I rolled over and tried to ignore it, though it kept going for almost an hour before finally fading. By morning, I convinced myself it was nothing. But the next night, it happened again. The same low whispering beneath the floor. This time I pressed my ear to the floorboards. The wood was cold, almost icy, and the whispers grew clearer. There were 2 voices, I thought. One lower, gravelly, and another faint and fragile, as though it came from far away. They weren't speaking in English, or if they were, the words blurred into something too distorted to understand. My stomach twisted, but I told myself it had to be pipes after all. Old metal can make strange sounds when water moves through it. That's what I clung to, because the alternative, that I was hearing voices in the floor, felt ridiculous. The next day I brought it up to Warren, my landlord. "Do you hear anything weird at night?" I asked him casually while paying rent. He tilted his head. "Weird how?" "Like whispering, beneath the floor." He stared at me for a long second, then gave a short laugh. No, nothing like that. This building's old. You're probably hearing the pipes." I nodded, pretending to agree, but something in the way he dismissed it felt off. Too quick, like he'd heard the question before. That night I tried sleeping with the TV on low, hoping the background noise would drown out the whispers. It worked for a while, until I woke around 3 a.m. and realized the voices were back. And they were louder. This time the whispers weren't muffled. They pressed against the floorboards as if whoever spoke was just beneath the wood. The words slid against one another like a hiss, too quick and slurred to understand. My chest tightened as I lay frozen, the sound curling up through the cracks in the floor like smoke. I turned on the lamp, but the whispering didn't stop. For almost 2 hours it went on, never breaking, never pausing for breath. Only when the sky began to lighten with dawn did it finally fade into silence. That morning I decided I couldn't ignore it anymore. I moved the bed, cleared space, and pried up one of the looser floorboards near the center of the room. Beneath was only darkness, a layer of dust, some cobwebs, and about 2 feet of empty space before the concrete foundation. I poked around with a flashlight but found nothing unusual. No pipes, no wires, nothing. I replaced the board and sat on the edge of the bed, uneasy. That night when the whispers returned, I was ready. I lay with my head close to the gap I'd opened earlier, straining to catch even a single word. But the voices changed. Instead of muffled conversation, there was only one whisper now. Slow, deliberate. And though I couldn't understand the words, I felt with absolute certainty that it was speaking directly to me. I pulled back, heart pounding, and slammed the floorboards shut. Sleep didn't come after that. Over the next week, the whispers grew more insistent. Sometimes they started as soon as I lay down. Other times they came in the middle of the night, dragging me from uneasy dreams. Always that low voice circling beneath the floor, waiting for me to listen. And I did listen. Against my better judgment, I pressed my ear to the boards more than once. The words never became clear, but the tone did. Pleading one night, angry the next. Sometimes almost mocking the way it stretched and pulled at syllables I couldn't understand. The exhaustion wore me down. I showed up to work hollow-eyed, snapping at coworkers. Coffee barely helped. The idea of going back to the apartment filled me with dread, but I had nowhere else to go. Finally, one night I snapped. When the whispering began again, I tore the board up and shouted into the dark gap. "What do you want from me?" The whisper stopped. For the first time since it began, there was silence. I sat frozen, waiting, my own breath loud in my ears. Then slowly something shifted in the darkness beneath the floor. Not a sound this time. A movement. The faint scrape of something dragging against the concrete. I dropped the board back into place and shoved my dresser over it, shaking so badly I could barely stand. The next day I went straight to Warren. "I can't stay there," I told him. "Something's wrong with that apartment." He looked at me for a long moment, then sighed. "You're in 2B, right?" "Yeah." His jaw tightened. "You should have been told. The basement's sealed off, but years ago, before my time, there was a tenant down there. People say he used to talk through the vents, whisper to the tenants above him at night, creep them out bad. One day they found him down there, dead." I stared at him. "And you didn't think to mention that when I signed the lease." "It's an old building," Warren said. "Every place has a history. If you can't handle it, maybe you should look elsewhere." I left before I said something I'd regret. That night the whispering came back, louder than ever. I packed my bags and left before dawn, never once looking back at the apartment. I found another place a month later. Smaller, pricier, but quiet, blissfully quiet. Except, sometimes late at night, when the house settles and the world is still, I swear I hear it again. That same low whisper curling up from somewhere deep below. And I wonder if I ever really left it behind. This story is a continuation of something that happened to me a few weeks ago. If you haven't heard it yet, I'll give you the short version. Late one night while I was taking out the trash, I saw a figure standing across the cul-de-sac. A man in a long black raincoat and a wide-brimmed hat. He didn't speak, he didn't move. He just watched me. When I tried to confront him, he disappeared. But when I ran back to the house, I heard him. Footsteps, scraping, knocking, right outside my garage door. The security camera never caught any of it, but I came away with scrapes on my arms and palms from diving in under the door. Scrapes I still have scars from. I'd like to tell you things went back to normal after that night, but they didn't. For days afterward, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. At first, I told myself it was paranoia. Every time I took the trash out, I expected to see him there again. But the cul-de-sac stayed empty. It wasn't until a week later, when I started having trouble sleeping, that things got worse. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, heart pounding, convinced there was someone in the room with me, a shadow in the corner, a presence by the door. Every time I'd turn on the light. And of course, nothing was there. I tried to brush it off. Lack of sleep, stress. But then one night it all came together. And I finally understood. He wasn't just outside anymore. It was close to 2 a.m. when I jolted awake. I couldn't move. My eyes were open. I could see the dim glow of the clock on the nightstand. But my body was frozen. Panic set in immediately. I'd had sleep paralysis before, maybe once or twice in my life, but never like this. The air in the room felt heavy, pressing down on me, like a weight. I tried to breathe slowly, calm myself, tell myself it would pass. That's when I saw him. At first, just a shadow in the corner, but as my eyes adjusted, I could make out the shape. Tall, broad shoulders, a long coat, and that wide-brimmed hat. The man in the raincoat. He was standing in the corner of my bedroom, perfectly still. My chest tightened. My heart hammered against my ribs, so loud I swore it would shake the walls. I tried to scream. Nothing came out. My mouth wouldn't open. The figure didn't move, didn't speak. He just stood there, angled slightly toward me, like he was waiting. Seconds dragged by like hours. The more I stared, the more the darkness seemed to gather around him, like he was drawing it in. Then, he tilted his head. The exact same movement I'd seen in the cul-de-sac. My stomach turned to ice. He began to move, not walking, not stepping, sliding. His form glided across the room so smooth it was like the floor wasn't even there. He came to the foot of my bed and stopped. I could see no face, just blackness beneath the brim of that hat. I wanted to close my eyes. I couldn't. Then slowly, he leaned forward, closer, closer, until he was looming over me, hat brim just inches from my face. The weight on my chest grew unbearable. Every nerve in my body screamed to move. And then, like a snapped cord, my body jerked free. I sat upright, gasping for air, clutching my chest. The corner was empty. The foot of the bed, empty. But the fear lingered, so strong it made me shake. The next morning I tried to convince myself it had been a dream. Sleep paralysis, nothing more. But deep down I knew better, because of the smell. When I woke up that morning, the air in my room carried a damp, musty scent, like wet fabric left in a closet too long, like a raincoat. That night I didn't want to go to sleep. I left the TV on in the living room and sat awake until 3, until 4, until 5. When the sun came up, I felt a little safer. But a man can't live without sleep. By the third night, exhaustion won. I lay down, light still on, the air conditioner humming softly in the background. My eyes slipped closed, and once again, I woke up frozen. This time I didn't see him right away. At first there was only silence, then a creak, the sound of my bedroom door opening. It was slow, deliberate. The hinge moaned softly as the door inched wider. And in the gap, he stood. That same coat, that same hat. The man in the raincoat. He didn't step inside, not yet. He just filled the doorway, blocking the light from the hall. I tried to scream, tried to move. Nothing. He began to glide forward. The door eased shut behind him, the click of the latch echoing like a gunshot in the stillness. Closer, closer. At the foot of the bed again. I couldn't breathe. My chest heaved uselessly, starved of air. The weight pressed harder, pinning me. Then he raised a hand. Long, pale. Fingers stretched unnaturally far, jointed too many times. He reached toward me. Every nerve in my body screamed as his hand hovered inches above my chest. I swore I felt the air shift, cold, heavy. My vision blurred. The edges of the room darkened, and then, just like before, my body snapped awake. I gasped, sat up. The room was empty. The door was closed. But I knew what I'd seen, what I'd felt. And this time, he'd touched the air above me. The next time, I feared he wouldn't stop there. I didn't sleep again that night. I didn't sleep the next night either. By the third day, I was half delirious. I told myself I should leave, get out of the house, stay at a friend's. But deep down, I was afraid he'd just follow me, wherever I went. So I stayed. And on the fourth night, I made a mistake. I lay down. I told myself it wouldn't happen, that I was too tired for it to happen again. But of course it did. This time I woke not to silence, but to sound. Dripping. Water. The steady drip of rain hitting the floor. But it wasn't raining outside. I forced my eyes open. And there he was, standing beside my bed, the brim of his hat dripping, dark droplets sliding off his coat, pooling on the floor beside me. The air reeked of mildew and damp cloth, his head tilted, slowly, and then he leaned down, close, closer. I could feel the wetness of his coat brush against my arm, cold, heavy. His hand reached out again. This time it pressed against my chest, and I felt it, the icy pressure sinking through my skin down to the bone. I thought my heart would stop, and then, just as my vision tunneled, my body broke free. I screamed, shoved backward, fell out of bed onto the floor, gasping, choking. When I looked up, the room was empty, but the sheets where he had stood were soaked through, cold, damp. And on the floor where I'd landed, a single wet footprint. Not mine. I don't know how much longer I can take this. I don't know why he's here or why he won't leave me alone. But I know this much. He isn't just some shadow outside. He isn't just a dream. The man in the raincoat is inside my house now. And if he can touch me once, what happens the next time I can't wake up?
Thank you for listening to tonight's episode of Nocturnal Echoes. If tonight's story stayed with you or helped quiet the weight of the day, consider liking, subscribing, or sharing the show with someone who finds comfort in the company of shadows. I'm your host, Bastion Crow. Until next time, keep your eyes open and the lights low.